Here you go.
Thank
You're
you.
right there.
Okay, after that interesting introduction, welcome everyone. In case you are wondering why I'm doing a whole session on literature, it has to do because of what it represents about the medieval period. And that, of course, means that as far as it's concerned, the Divine Comedy is medieval literature's greatest work. There are many works in Italian literature that precede and follow this one. But when we think about the Divine Comedy, those of us in medieval, this basically has it all. I mean, in terms of the ideals and in terms of medieval Italy and so much else in addition. Here you see, of course, there's Adam and Eve up there, the earthly paradise, the Garden of Eden, and you don't have to be a biblical scholar, though it helps, to understand the enormity of the knowledge that Dante possessed. And he's right there, as the famous Harvard historian Charles Homer Haskins said, he's there sort of between the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. And he indicated, 1 foot in one and one in the other. But and I know that that's just a simile basically to say that Dante, who lived between the 13th and 14th centuries, pre-Black Death, but still early enough to appreciate both. And of course, if you were an Italian author, you would definitely be interested in Dante, because Dante is your maestro, I guess you would say, the greatest of the great. As Frank told you,
There you go.
oh, thank you. And again, we can't resist a map of the Italian states, because remember, it will not be united until the 19th century. Grazie, Garibaldi, huh? But when we think of the various parts, and we talked about the kingdom of the two Sicilies, and of course, we think of St. Peter or others who are responsible for that lilac part there, the Papal States, which I'm sure St. Peter was probably not involved with, but nice name nevertheless. And then, of course, today's area of greatest concern is there in, what would you say, Lemon? And there, of course, Florence, the place I never wanted to leave. And look at the size of it. It's very large, but notice that it also contains Siena, another tourist dream, and quite important in its way. What I want us to get about is folks who live together so closely. Sometimes you should say, you're Italian, I'm Italian, and we love each other very much. And yet, not the case. There was fighting and conflict amongst these various groups over territory. I know all the rest of it. So this is to be borne in mind during the period with which we are concerned. And you know that this will involve everyone. And of course, in this period also, who can forget about Machiavelli? Yeah, and the Prince, and realize, I mean, it's like you would all like to come together and say Cavour and Mazzini and all these people, and we're all, going to have a pizza together and love each other. But it's not going to be that way. I don't know. It'd be like if we were fighting with people from up in Valley, but we're not. We love you people. Okay. Yeah. So don't forget that we're very ecumenical in Lee County. So we understand that about the competition. Now I got a lot here. Dante, just trying to give you the background on his life. He was from obviously a family of wealth and education, wealth moderate, and obviously great education, right? Yeah. And he actually mentioned some of his teachers in the Divine Comedy, not necessarily pleasantly, but another story. He was part of the government, and that government service would involve diplomacy, which is very, very important for those who know of Italians and the development of government, like the papacy and others, who had resident ambassadors, which is a very, very important part of government, especially if you're an Italian, because we need to check up on you. So we may go up to Valley to see what you're up to and if you're behaving. And if not, when you go down to South Alabama or Florida, we may have a surprise attack. So you need to be aware. You better watch out. So actually, he was on a diplomatic mission when Florence was taken over by a post hostile to him. And you know what? He never came home. He never got home again. It's very tragic. And what fascinates me is he settled in another of my favorite places, Ravenna. And guess what? Now, this was in 2019. Do I try to stay current just for you? Yes, I do. I want to be up to date. No yellow notes here. I'm telling you, the latest is the two Chamber of Commerces are fighting over his remains. I know, that's sad. I mean, yeah, because Ravenna has them and Florence wants them. And Ravenna says, no, we would like to keep them. Speaking of dogs and mangers, I mean, really? Because the man was Florence all the way. And Ravenna, don't you think Ravenna should have enough? They've got a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, I would go there. You give me a Holiday Inn room, whatever, I'll stay anywhere. But they're still fighting about it. And you think, where do we go? Maybe they'll have to go to, yes, the shepherd that succeeded St. Peter, aka Boniface VIII. Name which will live in papal infamy, won't it? You'll notice his dates. Now, it should be said of Dante that we talk about a serious Catholic, a very, very serious Catholic. And he was one. However, his dislike for Boniface and Boniface's family was great. How great was it? Well, it was because of Boniface's family who was involved in the struggle in Florence that Dante could never come back. And did he say, I want to resolve my difference? I love you, and yet, no, he did not. And of course, when you read the Divine Comedy, Boniface will come up, but not in a pleasant way. But this didn't mean that Dante is going to say, gosh, I wish I could live long enough that Martin Luther could be around. But he was always seriously Catholic. I mean, there was never any doubt. It was just he looked at Boniface as a boo-boo, as popes go. And we'll get more to that. Now, the painting. This, of course, is 19th century, and for what it's worth, which probably does not rank it as one of the great paintings of all time, but it gives you the idea of how he met the woman, or the girl really, that he would come to signify as the symbol of the perfect ideal of femininity. They often speak in medieval literature of every woman as Eve or Mary, which is a bit unfair, but there you are. In his notion, and she seems a little older to me in that, because his experience, if you want to call her that, is when they were children. But I guess you would see somebody at a party and you think, oh, I'll never get to go out with them. I'm not in their league, that kind of thing. Or maybe you've been that person and all these guys are just surrounding you and they're thinking, wow, she is so great. But you never see them again until that reunion, class of 63. And you say, wow, they're not the same person. Yes, they are. But it's called advancement, isn't it? So all of this is to say that she never aged, and Beatrice was a perfect example. And you say, were there other women? Well, there was one, his wife, children, races, mortgage, everything, all of that. And he was perfectly faithful. I'm assuming she went on over to Ravenna. I know. But you always have that, don't say anything to the spouse, but you always remember Miss Perfection. Keep her away. And that's what he did with Beatrice. Of course, I think she probably passed away during the Black Death, but whatever the case, it's very important for our story to be aware of her. And of course, we've talked before about courtly love and the image of the perfect woman. And I mean, while people love their wives and all of that, that's not the same thing. So there's a sort of image. Now, the exile, writing the Divine Comedy, and then his other works. As you know, he will have this idea of one government bringing together the Pope and the Emperor, when they would love each other and work together in harmony. what about the rest of the world? Well, let's not. We don't worry about that back then. If you're thinking China, the Greeks, Constantinople, no. But our world, which is the one important, is the Pope and Emperor working in harmony and sharing authority. That's what the world government is all about, the courtly love. And of course, this means the idealized women who were then pursued by the knights. Do we need a knight in armor? Well, clearly Dante was not a knight in armor, but he is questing for righteousness, questing for truth. And the idealized woman, see, will be the source of that. Could he be thinking of the Blessed Virgin Mary? Oh, yes. I think seriously. And then, of course, the vernacular language, and that means using that Italian. And if you want to study Italian, you could do far worse than studying Dante. The same way for Chaucer and studying English and not going to some cliff notes either. Not to condemn those who did that in the past. But I know you wouldn't do it now. You have reformed, and we are happy for that. But all of this is to say that when you get into Chaucer, then medievalists would always say, but what about Dante? I mean, it's like they're both very important, but for me, Chaucer's Canterbury Tale seems a bit lighter. And this seems to have more oomph, more impact in terms of the medieval studies. The comedy comes about because you go from sadness to joy, as opposed to the opposite, because of course we're going from hell to heaven, and nobody wants to be in hell. Boccaccio, as in the Decameron and sorted other works, will later attach the divine to it, which I think is interesting, because people like Petrarch and Boccaccio admired Dante greatly and looked at him as their master. So there's no surprise there, because they both, of course, wanted to write in Italian, not to mention Latin. So it's the linguistic skills of these people were always amazing. Now you say, yeah, but I bet they didn't know Greek. Yeah, fine fault. I know they didn't know Greek. But I'm very impressed with their knowledge, considering that people like Dante were actually developing the language, if you stop and think about it. For those of you who are interested in the history of the Italian language, you are going back to the 13th century when it was still rather not primitive, but newish. And for those who really want to dig deep into Dante, and you don't have to go to Wikipedia, you can actually get the Sinclair version, and you get the Italian on one page and the English on the other page. That's hardcore. I mean, when you're ready to where I heart Dante, you can do that. You get into 3-volume version. Yeah, still available on Amazon. Yeah,
I'll check it out.
yeah, please do. J.D. Sinclair. Because I feel like for the real purist. And the Dorothy Sayers version. Yeah, I know. I knew that would ring a bell. To many of you. Okay. The Divine Comedy, written in exile. Thank you. Grazie, Ravenna. So, he was there. And I don't think he was, I think after all that he had already done, imagine constructing this, constructing a work which is his idea, using both Catholicism and his classical training. We never forget that. It's not as if this is part of the catechism. There is a lot that's Catholic, but there's a lot that's not Catholic. As a matter of fact, this was on the list of prohibited books for a long time. That's not R, X. Yeah, you do not read it, or you could be going to hell. So the idea is that he, as a devout Catholic, he thought, is basically going along with Catholic ideals. But at the same time, you will definitely be aware that this was a guy who knew Greco-Roman mythology and other aspects of the classical tradition. So many of you who love mythology or Greco-Roman history, you will be happy if you decide to go with the Dorothy Sayers version, or you want to go with the Sinclair version. I'm just trying to get you excited. Okay. I thought if I could just whet your appetite, that would be enough. And you can get it used if you want to save money. Yeah. Yeah, I'm very economically minded. So, what is it about? Literally, and remember, we always have our literal and allegorical interpretations. That had been done throughout the history of Christianity, as far as I'm aware, and indeed the history of Judaism. And that is all of these passages from Scripture. For example, Mary and Martha, remember, one represents the great person who runs around helping folks and doing that. But Martha stays there with the Lord, and she represents the spiritual, the person who is always communicating with the divine. So, literally, the state of the soul, straightforwardly affirmed. And as Dorothy Sayers points out, he is very much, and you got to understand this, a traditional Catholic. He's not of any modern tradition. So that means you get what you ask for, and there are no excuses, because allegorically you'll notice, and these are actual quotations in which he writes one of his patronesses, what he's doing. In English translation, in the exercise of his free choice, he becomes liable to rewarding or punishing justice. Remember, they hadn't had psychology. No, so they can't say, well, it was my father, or I had problems. You know, all of that. It's all about your free will. You did this, and now suck it up. That seems a little hard, but that's the way he saw it. And so the idea of the state of the soul after death, when we meet these people, as we are about to, it's like, yeah, I'm really sorry, but you kind of did it. So this is the way it is, thanks to you. So looking, if you could get a mirror, I don't think they had mirrors where these people are, but matter of fact, they don't even have bodies. Yeah. They're not going to get that back until the day of judgment. So I know it'll even be worse then, because it's time that we can go to hell. Okay. We're almost ready. And we have two guides. And of course, the man in blue is everybody's favorite, who is a classicist. I imagine there was probably a cliff note on this. Do you think Virgil's Aeneid? Or maybe in Latin class? I don't think a purist who was in Latin 3 or Latin 4 in high school would have resorted to something of that sort, the yellow and black material. But if you knew people of that sort, Virgil's Aeneid can be rather tricky if you're taking Latin. In any event, for Dante, he would have been like, I love. Yeah, it was that close. And you say, but how could a nice Catholic boy love him so much? Well, he's so great, I think. I'm torn. I wish he had been Christian, but it didn't work out for him, and he's mighty, mighty great. So that's how, as the inspiration for Dante, he turns to the righteous pagan. I'll let him have righteous, because he lived a good life, and he was a great lover of the Roman Empire. And of course, we can't get enough of the Roman Empire, because Roman Empire and Pope indicates bliss and joy of the world that could be. So we have them there. And I think that angel of hell is basically saying, what do you say? Who goes there? Or something of the sort. And like, do you have authorization? I want to see your papers. You know, it's like some sort of Vichy movie, but it's you know, you always think, how are you authorized to come in here? And he says, yeah, I was sent on a special mission. I'm escorting this Dante Alighieri character, and so all right, you can come in then. The volumes, I should say, of Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso will also include, of course, the guide for the end of the Purgatorio to heaven, and of course, that imagery of Beatrice, who is now, I would say, super elevated from a girl at a birthday party to virtually a stand-in for the Mother of God. And it's a tough act to follow. I mean, but I would assume, since Beatrice was, I'm sure, a very nice person, but I think she led a very, a life that would have been appropriate for a 14th century upper class Florentine, family and all the rest of it. But again, that's in his head, which is fine, because that was very important to the story. Now we start, as you know, from these Doré illustrations. And of course, the idea that he comes at the age of 35, which they considered halfway through life. And of course, based on the allegory, midway this way of life we're bound upon as the Divine Comedy begins, in Sinclair's translation. You can imagine I had it in college and it stayed with me. So they arrive in a dark wood because we lack understanding. All of this is terribly allegorical, isn't it? Yes. But that's always why we love the literature. But we have the story and we have these interesting illustrations by the paintings. Before he gets into hell proper, Virgil wants him to meet some of the crowd, some of the special group. You say, well, they ought to go to heaven. I mean, if you or I had said, what's Plato and Aristotle doing in a place like this? Because I love Plato and Aristotle, even though I read about them in Cliff Notes when I was younger. But now I've repented and I want to read the unabridged full version. Right. So the idea is these were inspirations, of course, for both Dante and Virgil. And as such, they're sort of like the noble pagan. Now, you can't go to heaven. You can't even make purgatory, but you don't belong in hell either. You say, but there are really significant Jews that should be there. No, we've taken care of them. When Christ made his stop in hell, he took, according to the tradition, he had rescued the righteous Jews. So they're not there. And what we have instead is like a faculty meeting of philosophers and all those people, probably some mathematicians, Euclid or Galen and people like that. And what are they doing? I would hate to think it was like a forever faculty meeting. Yeah, I know. Because talk about truly hell. Yeah. Yeah. I've thought about that many a time. God, let me out, please. Yeah. So all of this and wow, so you wrote the Republic. That's really cool. I mean, you want to say nice things to all these people, Plato and Aristotle. So again, they are at the outskirts and they are forever signed. Alas, can't make the Big Ten, but we're close, but far. Of course, the famous quotation here, and one of my favorites, is he never calls the name of Aristotle. He just indicates, as he's speaking to Virgil, whom he calls master, say, Master, who is the one that everybody is thronging about? He said, he is the master of those who know. And I always look at my students and I say, that's because it could be only one, Aristotle. The botanist, the mathematician, I mean, all of it, the political scientist. And so in limbo, he loves Aristotle. And again, this is very, very important. When you think about the time before the scientific revolution and all the rest, that darn Isaac Newton took care of this. But right now, it's all about Aristotle in terms of science, in terms of philosophy, and all the rest of it. So very, very important. So we're there. And then we come to the area for the neutrals. They're the ones who say things like, oh, I'd rather not get involved. It's none of my concern. Yeah, I see points on both sides. And see, they're getting even closer. God, it would be like getting too close to 4th of July, at the barbecue. And it's going to be bad. I'm squirting on them. lighting on the charcoal. Here we have an illustration of Pope Celestine V. And that's called He Who Made the Great Refusal. Some of you may recall when Pope Benedict, I think his name was Benedict, resigned and went into retirement. Oh, and the media got very excited, some will remember, because this hadn't happened in a long time. And of course, entered the papacy as I am. I said, 1294, 1294. I know that gets a little obnoxious, but yeah, I know. So I'm thinking, finally, somebody cares other than my little group, because we've been excited a long time, but there was the idea. Notice what he says here, because of course, his detestation of Boniface VIII. Pope Celestine V, as you can tell from his head, was of a monastic sort. And he had been brought in because there were so many lawyer popes, so many, popes of high education, administrators. So they thought, this time, let's just choose somebody who's kind of far out. So the future Pope Celestine was actually a hermit, meaning he was otherworldly. So I think the cardinals just pull him out of his cave because he was like, living this hermit-like life. And they were saying, just sign here, put your St. Peter on this, it's sort of, he said, gosh, all this is so complicated. I just want to pray and be back in the cave. They said, well, that's just not possible. So finally, see the shade of him who from cowardice made the great refusal. It is said that maybe the future Boniface VIII had sort of manipulated him. When Pope Celestine was at prayer, that agents of Boniface would say, Pope Celestine, this is God speaking. You need to step down. You are not worthy. Someone who is much more outstanding needs to be Pope. I'm speaking for God. Okay. And so that was a rumor that was going around. Whatever the case, he resigned, and Dante, I don't know, this may not be fair, but he basically makes him the neutral. And now they do not have this great life as the scholars did. These people are running around after a big banner that has nothing on it. It's like they don't have a direction. But in the famous Motown words, no place to run, no place to hide, right? So it's interesting that, and I put the question mark simply because he's never named, but I think we can assume. And he will be, he'll live a few more years, but he'll basically be put in safekeeping to pray. But he will be contained in case he gets ideas of going around being a troublemaker. So, all hope abandon, ye who enter here. That's, of course, they're going, Dante with great trepidation, but Virgil leading the way into the place. And all the descriptions always talk about the stench and the hideous nature. And, it's not like it's some long party and then they'll quiet down, like we know in Auburn. And you say, gosh, it's 2, it's 3. I'm sure they need rest too. No, we are 24/7 operation in hell, which is awful to think about, but that's where they go in this story. And of course, allegorically, a very important concept. Love the paintings. Talk about 19th century, 18th century, probably Romanticism. And the idea of the 2 of them, the river Styx, and of course, get on this boat, you damn people. Get it? Damned? Yeah. Because it's not, you could say it allegorically or literally. You'd say, gosh, I guess they were working out before coming because everybody looks great. It's interesting when you think about it, how people look really good in romantic art. But there they are. And again, it's like, do they really want to be going to the land of damnation? Well, they don't have a choice. It's not like, gee, not this trip, maybe we'll come another time. Or no, I think this is your calling. So all of that. And again, it's interesting how they mix the Catholic teaching sometimes with these various, the river Styx or Karen the Bowman, how they mix the 2 together, which is very important, I think. And the people, who are reluctant, what Dante said, please, would you like me to help you on the boat? No, they will beat them because allegorically, you're going to hell. So, and I'm going to help you. It's not like, oh, can I bring you something? Would you like something? No. You're damned. So, and Dante, of course, is a good Catholic. So, I love the structure of hell based on Aristotle. Isn't that wild? To me, you think, shouldn't it be based on the Catholic Church? Well, I'm sure the Catholic Church thinks so. But what I really like to emphasize here is that this was not intended to be an exact replication of Catholic theology. Obviously, it plays a great role. Now, what do I mean by Aristotle being connected? Simply the idea of the 3 levels of evil: incontinence, violence, and fraud. Obviously, we would like to avoid all of them, but this is part of those who do not ask for repentance. Lust, schism, anyone soward of treachery, anyone who is an agent of schism, and say, come on, let's just split off. And then, of course, treachery, treason, Brutus, or the like. Can you imagine the thought that goes behind all of this? It always amazes me. One of my favorite paintings here, because they look so good. It's a beautiful painting. And she was, believe it or not, the aunt of a friend of Dante's. Yeah, she had the reputation. I mean, the story was well known of how she had been involved in an affair with her husband's younger brother. And her husband called him. And he was not pleased. And they died immediately, both of them. So there's no time to say, I'm sorry that we committed adultery. So he couldn't get a better example, he thought, of the circle of lust, and they look great, but they're not going anywhere. They're just going to be the circle of lust. They're in a world, and they will all be. And of course, the husband will be even lower, much lower, as someone who kills their family members. But Francesca and Paolo are very, very famous characters in the Divine Comedy. Sometimes you'll ask me, I wonder if that family appreciated getting included. I'm assuming that it was pretty well known. So you wonder, I mean, now media exposes everything, doesn't it? So I'm assuming that maybe the family was known as Remini's, and I'm assuming that regardless of what they thought, it was known about. So it's not like, wow, I had no idea. I think a thing like this would have been well known in the better circles in Florence. This, of course, was for really loathsome people. And I hope no one ever calls you a simoniac. Yeah, that would hurt your feeling. I know. No, you're not one. No, I know you're not. But if you meet any, stay away from them, okay? Because they want to sell church positions. Hey, you want to be a bishop? Yeah, I've got one for you. The Bishop of Valley. Yeah, you have the whole bell. Yeah, and you say, wow, how much will that cost? Well, we got a special on it. Right. Yeah. Bargain. So all of that idea, of course, upside down, get it? Spiritual versus the financial, and they've got everything in reverse. So that's why they are in that position, which could be, I think, very painful. I mean, to be upside down. And believe you me, I mean, it's like being charcoal forever. Yeah, 24/7. Yeah, I'm with you. What did they say? Hot as hell. Yeah. And it stinks too to make it worse. Yeah. So, so that's all the footsies. You say, gosh, those look so familiar. Well, yeah, those are Pope feet. Yeah. So they're special. But we've got some coming up. And of course, in the famous passage, the popes who can't really see because they're upside down can tell Dante is standing over them. They know a person is standing over them and says, Boniface, is that you? I didn't realize you were coming this soon. And of course, he said, no, dunderhead, it is not Boniface, but it's somebody who hates people like you because you have disgraced the church. Ooh. That was Pope Nicholas III. And I mean, I'm sorry I asked, but I was just inquiring. But yeah, that Dante is not, he will give him hell and tell him what he thinks. And he doesn't go, gosh, I'm sorry. I wish I could bring you. Maybe you would enjoy a cocktail, or if you weren't upside down, spill it. But yeah, I mean, it's really, really interesting to see his righteous indignation, shall we say, about these simoniacs. So don't go near them, okay? They'll probably have them. I love Simon, so you'll be warned. So, as you can tell, I'd love to go through every layer if I had time. But trying to keep my time. Oh, I love Satan. And doesn't he look? He likes to gnaw on people, you know? And what kind of people does he gnaw on? Well, and now we are, when we get down low, it's like, shall we say, winter in the polar regions, because he is former angel and who betrayed God. Is so his wings are kind of useless, but they will keep. There's no melting, so you're safe there. And of course, there will be all kind of traitors, because the cold-blooded get it. These are the losers, capital L. You're at the bottom.
This was the lowest ring, right?
Absolutely. You don't get any. If you get to hang out with Satan himself, it's not, oh, I love you, Satan. I mean, this is not like some special group. And we'll get to the specifics. I just introducing you see them up there. And again, Dante and Virgil up there on the cat. And you look and smell. I mean, it's all cold and unpleasant. It's not like, gosh, can we stay? Or, Kodak moment, or maybe I can Polaroid. I think they probably want to see it and then move on. Because of course, it's gonna get better. Now notice what I've always loved about the purgatory is we go up instead of going down. Yeah, look where you start, the anti-purgatory. That's sort of like orientation, Camp War Eagle, Camp War Purgatory. Yeah, it's like we got to get them set up, and those former 12th graders, they know they're ready to start. Okay, you former sinners. Now, what do you want to do? Be saved, So, some of us are got a long way to go. Look at right. I know you're saying like, yeah, well, I'm going to the top. I know, well, good for you, but the rest of us, see, slothful, lazy boys, ESPN. We know people of that sort. Kick back, chill. I could use other words, but you get the idea. All of that, avaricious, pulling out those bank accounts. All of it. Say, gluttonous, more fries, not less, more. So lots of, on and on and on. And the idea is, of course, they're all saved eventually. And then I think the Garden of Eden, the earthly paradise, is sort of the takeoff point for the big time. But while you are in your particular area, Camp War Purgatory, you are not going to be having fun. It's not there for, oh gosh, glad to meet you. It's great. No, it's not. Slothful. Yeah. Drills, early morning. You're going to pay big time. But the difference is, of course, there's great times ahead. And that is the allegory here. While they are being punished terribly, and that's why they're covered the way they are, and walking around these rocks, is that they're being punished as the damned are, but they are being saved. And they will be singing sometimes, we are the children of Israel, and we are leaving Egypt, and we know what that allegory is all about. We are the saved. Oh, isn't that awful? I mean, yeah. You see, you don't even have a nice outfit. You run around in the nude. And all those awful rock, and these are prideful, but Dante does not say anything ugly to these folks. I mean, sometimes he'll have a conversation. Could you wait up just a minute? Let me ask you, I'm Dante. What's your name? How do you suppose you ended up here? And what was your pride all about? That kind of thing. So there's some interesting chats, but again, they were well-known people, including a king of England. And again, Henry III, and if that doesn't ring a bell, it does, yeah. And we're going to have a class in which he will be covered. Just saying, in 24-25. Boy, that sounds like a long time, doesn't it? But it's next year. But anyway, gets a lot of cheap advertising. Now, we're going to have a switch. And why are we going to have a switch? Virgil has been great. Rate my guy. Yeah, 5-star. But we have to say goodbye. Adios. Au revoir. Because we can't go back. I mean, as much as we love them, and we love Latin, and we love the Aeneid, regardless of what Cliff Notes have, we want the original. And that means we've got to have a Christian. And of course, who will that be? Well, we know it's going to be Beatrice, because she is saved and she represents heavenly inspiration, aka the Mother of God. Oh my gosh, look at this. And immediately you think of Ptolemy and the geocentric theory. And you say, but what about Copernicus? Clear your mind of that. No, Copernicus. He doesn't come for centuries. These are my people. And we have our way of doing things. And how do we do it? We do it in a circular fashion. And of course, it's around the earth. So that is the design. Primum mobile, the first mover, as taught by Aristotle and others, creates the motion, the spheres going round and round. So you have all these groups, and you can imagine, as much as we miss Virgil, and we do, think in terms of the devout Catholic, how he feels now about being with the woman he, I hate to say loved, because that would seem unfaithful to your wife, but he fantasized about, idealized, maybe that'd be the best. So they are together, and now he will contact a variety of people, including some popes, because it's not the popes are all damned. We love some popes, top 10 popes, It's like, but don't bring up Boniface. But that's bad pope. But we love popes. And look, we go all the way down. See the earth? Can y'all see there? Make sure everybody sees Earth. And then the lowest group. And you say, gosh, I hate to be in the lowest group. I'm really down about that. No, you're not. You made it. You made the cut. Okay. So that's good. Speaking of making the cut, here they are. And guess who made the cut? It's the mother of Frederick II. That won't be on your phone. Yeah, I know. Aren't you glad? But fill in the blank. Ooh. Hohenstaufen, just to make it easy for you. That was Constance. And the legend of Constance was that she had been in a convent because nobody wanted to marry her, because she wasn't valuable, because the males had all the land. And then, oddly enough, all these men died, and suddenly she inherited all this land. So that's how she married Barbarossa's son. Try that out at a party. See how many know about that. They'll be impressed. Sicily? Yeah. We want Sicily. And before that, we were just ruling Sicily, not being just the ruler of Sicily. But how about being the emperor's wife? Well, that was great. And she lasted a while. And then her damn son took over. Well, he's in hell. Where and you say, gosh, I bet she's really upset. I don't think so. Because it's all about amnesia. Eternal amnesia. So the idea is she's in the lowest part, along with an aunt of one of Dante's friends, because they were ex-nuns. And you say, you mean they forsook their vows? Yeah, because some guy, like a brother or an uncle, whatever, pulled her out and said, I got somebody for you to marry. And there's a great, great package that comes with a marriage, all kinds of benefits and, and stocks and bonds, good portfolio. Yeah. And you could start breeding, have a boy. That's all the way you think about how women were used, but that's the truth. If the rumor were true about Constance, and you see the woman, it's not. The idea is they talk. He will ask her, aren't you unhappy? Because you didn't get to the top. You're in bottom place. Because, that's like saying you got a bronze medal or something. You're going like, yeah. It was a great race. It was like you get Miss Congeniality. And you're saying, I'm just glad I was nominated or something like that. And you don't do that in heaven. The famous quotation here, in his will is our peace. In other words, nobody's unhappy. We're all happy. And you don't think about bottom or top or any of that. That's again for losers. That's for the damned. It's like, well, I get to fly around with this guy that I had an affair with forever, 24/7. No breaks either. But here we are always blissful, and it will continue. Oh, God, one thing I love, they will have St. Francis and St. Thomas, rather St. Dominic, and they will hang out together because, Franciscans and Dominicans had their differences, but not in the paradise, man. They were happy, 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 and just loving on each other. So, the light is the end of the paradise. And of course, there's Beatrice showing him all of the heavenly angels and the joys to come. This is the way that this essentially ends. And there was, of course, great reaction to it, great in the sense of enormous, not all positive, I must say. As I say, the church officials were none too happy about. It's not like, well, we all need criticism sometime, and maybe I know it's like, yeah, maybe we can all come together and work on some of these issues. Maybe have a committee and studies, and then you're going to hell in a handbasket. Dante Alighieri. So now again, the allegory. I just wanted to get at this, the three. And for those of you from the literature world, the idea of the cantos, and I think there were 33 in each segment, so 100 total. So it's very big on all of these numbers. And of course, church militant, church expectant, church triumphant, the three, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Three is very, very big in all of this: sin, punishment, and redemption. Because remember, lots of these people who are in purgatory are in the last round because they, oh gosh, talk about favorite memories. A lot of you will remember Manfred, who was the illegitimate son of Frederick II. Now, I wouldn't put that on final, but yeah, I know, because some of you were off on trips having fun. Yeah, not to condemn, not to judge. I'm just saying, some of you were here when I discussed Manfred because he was the son and he took over Sicily, and sort of a romantic figure. In any event, Manfred's in purgatory. You say, how did he make it? Well, right, the battle fell over. He said, I'm really sorry. And that took care of it because he was baptized and now he expressed penance. Now, does that mean a quickie through purgatory? I don't think so. You're going to be here. Hard time, as they say on my series. Yeah. No soft time, hard time. So, but the idea is, regardless of the length and the amount of drudgery, you're going to get out of here. And that, of course, is what's important, because you don't want to be like Francesca, whirling around, or that yucky son of yours, Frederick II, who is there, in a lake of fire. He is really uncomfortable. So, again, Virgil, we have the classical learning. Now we have the sort of the binary, I guess you'd say binary, yeah. The idea of the Roman classical and then the Christian. And therefore you have Virgil and Mary, aka Beatrice, which might seem bizarre, but that's the way it was. That she is the allegorical symbol of perfection. And of course, the Marian tradition here, we're not even up to Immaculate Conception, which had not been made into an official doctrine at that point, but it was widely accepted. The Immaculate Conception and all the rest of the Marian tradition. So, Mary produces Jesus, Jesus brings salvation. So, you know, that's why I said earthly instance. Again, it's all about the allegory. And again, I guess it's up to us whether we accept it or not, but we understand that this is very important for Dante people to be aware of. Now, what's another big two? Well, you know what it is. You got Rome, and then you have Christ. Yes, reason and faith. And which is the greater? We already know. Go big F, right? Yes, you got to have the faith, reason. You know who I just thought of? St. Anselm of Canterbury. And you say, gee, I want to know more about him. Come back. 24. I know that's cheap advertisement. I know I'm really a very, very sorry individual, but that you can find out. Oh, the greatest hits of Anselm. Oh, you say, I love philosophy. Come on back. You're going to get plenty. So, two authorities, empire and church. You say, but I've got a lot of Orthodox friends. What about them? Sorry. Well, I've got friends of other faiths. That's a no-go. This is the 13th century. We're not into the Enlightenment. Okay. No Enlightenment for real. It's one way. So the duality, as I call it, and let's get some wings flapping. And yes, who's going to help us keep it cold? I'll tell you the big three. Because we got to have three. You know why? Inferno, Purgatorio, Paradiso. Although I should be going that way. Brutus and Cassius, dynamic duo. And then Judas. And what are they up to? They're getting eaten. Yum, yum. The three mouths of Satan. Isn't that wild? It's not pretty, though. Pictorially speaking, and if you have a lot of imagination, do you think, did they finish them? Does anybody get indigestion? No, I think Satan's okay that way. I don't guess he has to have a stomach. And the chewing goes on. I always said, how could that be? Well, I guess you just keep on coming back. When he finishes with one version, then he can chew you up again. So that's what you have to look forward to. And again, it's forever. Because you're the worst of the worst. The ice-blooded, cold, etc. And again, church and empire. And the idea of Jesus, and then Augustus, or however you want to do it. But it's always dynamic duo, isn't it? Because that's the way that Dante's allegory is going to go. Oh, I love this. Because I wish the rest of it, but, you know, this is something that must have been unfortunately erased, but you can see the wings. And of course, you see down there, I guess it's supposed to be Brutus and Cassius. But the idea is, you know what they did? Ides of March, Julius Caesar. And it's not so much we love Julius Caesar, because he's probably in hell too. But they allegorically hurt Rome. And they got to pay for that by getting eaten. And yeah, seconds. Yeah. And then, of course, Judas Iscariot, as we all know. Oh, God, you'll turn. You are in hell when you look at that. Be very careful. You may want to look away. Yeah, you might turn stone. You say, but I love Boniface. Well, you're in a minority, okay? Because his reputation, and this is not the last time I'll discuss Boniface. I'm so interested in Boniface. A whole group of us are really interested in what he did. But basically, while Boniface's family had been very important in connection with the expulsion of Dante's group from Florence. And remember, Dante could have been president of the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, the idea, we love all, even when we don't live it. But we love it in our hearts. And then you think about, I love Ravenna. I'd love to go back. But I'm telling you, when you're from Florence, Ravenna's not our first choice. So the idea being that he did this to us, and not to be selfish about it, but his family and he are really vile people. And how was he Pope? I'm going to use a word that you know all too well. I hope you never call anybody this. Usurper. Oh, yeah, I know. I heard that groan throughout the room. Yeah, no usurpers here or dour people. But doesn't he look kind of dour? Like, yeah, just happy to spread the gospel. And I just want to tell the birds and the bees about the love of God. I don't think so. I'd like to tell people about power. And I am the King of Kings. Jesus and I have consultations. Regardless of Boniface, he was a committed Catholic, and there's, as far as I'm aware, no Catholic sect that could not accept, by this point, papal authority. So regardless of the individual, and we know about so-called bad popes, that does not affect the institution itself. So he was a true believer. So what do you have to have if you have a pope? You got to have an emperor. Why? Two in one, as they used to say about serfs, remember? The idea is, can you just have a pope all that? I can handle all that. No. Duality. Because you have a soul and you have a body. Soul, body. So you got to have pope and emperor. So he'll have this image of the emperor. And the emperor was actually from Luxembourg. Can you imagine? At that point, Henry of Luxembourg. It won't be on the phone. Henry VII. But who's counting? Everybody has Henrys. That's a very popular name. Yeah. Henry's in France. Henry's in England. But this was Henry VII, who was the emperor. And these states are fighting in what will become Germany and Italy. Remember, neither is a country. And you're going like, well, how does Dante feel about that? Remember, he's an idealist. So he is talking about, what would you say, non-reality, how it should be. They all come together under an emperor. And then we have the Pope and the emperor. And I love you, emperor. I love you, Pope. You know, that kind of thing you say. But that's not the way it was. I'm telling you, That's why we have ideals, right? I mean, this is what he is all about. So we say a not very fond farewell to Boniface VIII. And we recall that Dante, and here's another painting of him, is definitely someone you say, gosh, I can't wait to get started. I think I'll carry them to the beach this summer so I can really go over it. And I will not use any Cliff Notes or Wikipedia. I'm going to study them, and I may take a course in Italian so I can read it in the original. I'm very happy to learn that. I salute you. And next time we're going to talk about kings of England, Lancastrian, Yorkists, and the idea that the English monarchy was in a heap of trouble. And I thank you, and I'll see you next time. Okay? Thank you.